I can do it. Good evening, and good evening, and welcome to Let's Drone Out, episode 427. This evening we are joined by Curry.
Hello.
Stephen.
Hey.
And David Allen.
Hello.
And we're very happy to have you here, David. Stephen invited you along because I think basically you've helped him out a lot in his mission to get an FPV racing certificate. So I wonder if maybe Stephen, if you want to start off with that mission, then we can end up where David has been traveling the world since then.
Yeah. No problem. Well, yeah, I should probably show what all the fuss is about, because I'm one of apparently a handful of individuals who gave it a go and got the British Model Flying Association, not just the certificate, but the very rare FPV one. So yeah, I've got, I think that's the only FPV one. It's for quad racing.
I don't like the nitpick with the certificate, but it feels like the A should be centered. It's like OCD's kind of going off a little bit, and it's like, why is it pushed over to one side?
Mate, you're lucky it's not in Comic Sans. Come on now.
Do you know there has been a lot of discussion about that, and it's not really understood why it's off to the left-hand side and it should really be in the middle. I think it's because they stole the form from one of the other disciplines, which was slightly longer, and being left justified still worked. So what they need to do is review the whole lot and put them to center justified, and then I think your problem will be fine.
I'll be
Give it another 25 years and they'll fix it. Don't worry.
No, it'll be fine. You're valid.
Anyway, yeah. So David was happy enough to beat me at Ainsford Model Helicopter Club, and went through that and did all the safety questions, risk questions and things. And can you fly something with metal props? Absolutely not, you idiot. Don't do that. And so on. Height restrictions and where to fly, where not to fly, how to take off, how not to take off, and so on and so forth, which are all detailed very handily, I must say, in the handbook that's produced by the BMFA. So not actually too tricky a test, and pretty enjoyable experience as well, kind of seeing how these things work. And then I flew like the beginner novice that I am, very slowly and carefully through a series of gates without crashing and bouncing off things, and was awarded the certificate. So thank you very much, David. But I'm sure David has seen some epically better racing, because his other role is the GBR team manager, and he's just come back from the World Racing event. And probably has some stories to tell about that as well.
Yeah, lots of stories to tell you all about South Korea. Yeah, I mean, we started from right down the bottom, and started doing this 7 or 8 years ago. Met a few guys in the field, and then 3 weeks ago I was out in South Korea. It's been a fantastic journey.
Yeah, because this is the FAI World Drone Racing Championships, right? So the FAI are like about as official as you can get.
Yeah.
So that's this isn't there's other world drone events like the DCL have their world thing. DRL will kind of consider themselves a world thing. There's a multi GP world, but they're all kind of like they've set themselves up and then said we're the world thing. But the FAI are like they do like
they are the sporting body.
Yeah,
they are, and not only for us in the model division of that, but also if I went and got my FAI license, because I had to have one to be the team manager, it talks about full-size gliding, full-size helicopters, all sorts of things. So, I mean, I clearly haven't got the skill set to actually go and do those, but I had the piece of paper that would maybe let me apply for that. So, yeah, it was really prestigious, and I was so proud to be walking around the stadium at, behind all of our team, waving our flags. It was shown on television. Okay, it was South Korean television. I'm not sure how high the audience actually was. It was live streamed back to the UK. And I do know, although it was the middle of the night, plenty of people were up watching us.
I
hope
can
you lot
confirm
were as well.
Yep, definitely have my alarm set for 2 o'clock in the morning to come and watch like the heat of that we were in. And I remember there was particularly there was some very, very dramatic racing going on.
Well, Matt was doing his commentary, and he really was doing his best there, and he had plenty to commentate on. And our best heat as Team GBR was when our two competitors went up against each other. And one of them we thought would definitely be knocked out, but they both actually got through. Sorry if you haven't actually watched that yet, but if you do watch it, they do both get through on that heat. If you go to the BDRA website, there's actually a link there which will take you straight to that footage where Owen and the other guy's name we're flying against each other for a whole 2 minutes and whatever, and they were the actual only two that completed it. And it was
a very, very dramatic thing. I mean, to give some context, there were the last two of the Team GBR that were still in the racing, right? It was the double elimination finals, the lower bracket. So basically, if you don't finish first or second in this race, you're out. Like, that's it. That's your journey done. And they're up against, it just so happened, luck of the draw, that these two Team GB pilots were in this same one of these lower bracket heats. So, it was almost head to head. You've got to win this to get through. And then, the two of them are absolutely going hell for leather, but sort of, falling back behind. I think it was the Japanese pilots, I think, were sort of pushing way, way ahead. And it looked like the Team GB were both going to get knocked out, and then one of the other pilots like crashed out something and disappeared. He's like, "Hey, we're going to get one through," and then it looks like, oh no, he's too far behind. We're not going to get the other one. We're not going to get the other one. And then the other pilot also crashes out, and at like the last lap, the last corner, last lap, and then you've got both pilots through. Yes, we were in for another round. It's very good, very dramatic.
Yeah, there was a really tricky obstacle there right at the end, just before the finish line, which was a dive gate. Now, Stephen, you would have been pleased to see that there weren't dive gates in our test, because dive gates are probably the worst thing that you can do, and it's certainly something that's put me off of racing a little bit, to be honest, because I'm too crap to go through them, really. But but it was the saviour for Joshi to get through, and Joshi and Owen got through and into the next round, and that was a good day. I mean, we saw lots of emotions during that. I remember one round, and I won't say who I was assisting, because being team manager, I had to stand next to him, and I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, you've not got through." And his head was in his hands, and he disappeared for 15 minutes in a mature way, but just a moment to compose himself. And then we found out that actually someone had made a mistake earlier on the track, and so he was back in it again. And it really was nail biting.
Roller coaster.
I'm not sure it's really worth rewatching the whole 36 hours of the broadcast, but maybe the highlights.
I mean, to be honest, I did enjoy a lot of the streaming just to see how these poor cameramen have been tasked with following like racing quads around a racing track, like particularly like when it was nighttime and you had some LEDs that like nicely lit up against the background. It wasn't too bad, and after a few days of this, they got pretty good. But at the beginning, you should just go have a look, just spend 30 seconds looking at some of the first rounds of racing, and the camera guys trying to follow operators. Like a quad, like going full speed, middle of the day, like basically just a dot in the background. And they're like, oh my God, you just got lots of shots of like, oh, there was a quad here a second ago. There was a quad here a second ago.
Here's a gate. They'll probably be here any time now.
I think at the early part of the broadcast on day one, maybe day two as well, they were having issues actually getting the live stream into the TV broadcast. And I think once they got that, they could then use that to fill while they got other cameras into position, etc. But yeah, surely, well, as you all know from being a spotter, it's very difficult to work out which one you're actually supposed to be spotting if you're doing that kind of flight sometimes. And did you go through that gate? I haven't got a clue. Normally, I've only done a quarter of a lap and you've finished. Yeah, it was really good that they were LED lit and the colours were excellent. And I think that's something we'd like to do over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the track looked very exciting as well. I mean, we're used to sort of some fairly bare bones gates things. I mean, there's the inflatable things that have been turning up, and that's been making it a lot easier as a spectator to know what's going on. But the course out there, I reckon the budget is slightly higher than any
just
of
to the
events
point
we
of
run over here.
LEDs. I think with some of the racing, don't they have a minimum number of LEDs that you have to have on your quad?
For the World Championships, we were told that we had to have 40 LEDs.
Yeah.
And the quads had to be able to show, I think it was 6 colours. And no matter what angle, basically, the quad was at, it had to be visible and the light had to be there. And to be honest, putting light bulbs on the outside of a piece of carbon fibre as you're flying it into gates and things like that doesn't really enhance durability. No. So the LEDs did get replaced, and I don't think many people had them last more than a day, let alone the whole competition.
Well, can you kind of line them inside the airframe so they're visible, but not actually acting as a kind of roll cage for the quad?
Yeah, the rules were quite specific, unfortunately, and I think they're going to be reviewed, because when they were written, LEDs were nowhere near as bright as they are now, and so cob lights weren't actually allowed for some of the events. So what's come out since is like a cob light that you basically, it's almost like drawing on with a fluorescent marker around the edge of the frame. And so it's 3 millimeters high or something like that. And it looks really good, but it doesn't color change. So
it's one color and you've got to peel it off and get another. When I was out in Croatia, one guy turned up with those. I think is it Flywheel Rifelight who does a set? You can buy them in, red, green and blue.
I don't know, but it was brilliant. I hope we see some more dusk racing over here, and I hope we see some LEDs coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if we were hosting it, it would have to be an indoor event anyway, so maybe we should turn the lights off.
Yeah, they were pretty bright, but probably
there is something
obviously have to be waterproof, don't they?
Well, exactly. Yeah, and windproof. Very windproof at the moment.
Well, windproof would be a good thing, and it would have been a good thing for the obstacles out in Korea as well, because the wind picked up, didn't it, really? And a few of the obstacles got lost. 2 of them got taken out of the event permanently, and they weren't that robustly made. Having said that, they were about 4 meters or so tall. So when they came crashing down and laid flat on the floor, they weren't one gate anymore. And I wanted to put them back together, and I think the facing on them was 3mm ply, and a quad will go through 3mm ply.
Wow!
And what was happening on a couple of occasions, it would go through the face of the gate and not come out the other side and drop down in the middle. So it then became a bit of an exercise in how to get the thing back, because of course they didn't necessarily disconnect. So that wasn't very good, and we couldn't carry on with the race.
FPV being transmitted on a channel that you really, really need when you've only got 5 channels that you can really use.
That's
I've
right.
never heard of people use ply for gates before. I thought it was all plumbing supplies and fabric.
That's what I mean. This was a much higher budget looking track than normal.
This was in the millions. But it wasn't. We were, I hope to think, the prestigious part of the whole show. But the show was also about showing what South Korean technology was about, really, and they were using it as a fair to pull in people that want to buy a drone for crop spraying or surveying, or I think there might have even been a bit of military use that was being lightly talked about when we were there. It was part of a bigger show, and I don't think we'd ever get funding like that over here.
Well, I dare say
maybe not
if
yet.
Something like it happened over here, and that the government got wind, you may end up with BAE and others coming in and like, oh, by the way, we can sell some sort of defensive drones if you like, defensive with a couple of missiles as optional,
Yeah. Well, we we've done a few articles since we got back, and they've been picked up and they've been read by various people, and we've had some positive feedback. And I can't name names, but several people have come forward and said they're looking at sponsoring us for next year. I don't think they're going to give us millions, but it might cover the airfare, because it is expensive to get all the way to Korea. Where we'll be next year, I don't know.
I heard rumor that it was Italy, but maybe that is just rumor at this point.
The only substantiation to what was on that was on the chat. I don't think there's any officialness to that.
It's just rumors. So one of the things it's always tricky to get across in drone racing is getting an audience to watch it and understand it. You touched on like the cameras not being able to follow, and you said there was people viewing it. Do you think they got a pretty good idea of what was going on? Was the track adequately? Because sometimes you see stuff and it's like, oh, they haven't put like an idea of where you're turning next. So you see someone's DVR footage and it's just like sideways flying because they're going into turn so early, and it's really difficult.
We went up the next level, or they went up the next level from cones. They had 2 lines down on the floor, 2 lines of LEDs across the whole track. I still don't think it's something people are going to watch for 36 hours, which really was the length of the event. They were exceptionally.
I think watching anything for 36 hours is quite a push, really.
I mean, I watched the Formula One, but I mean, what's that across the weekend? 12 hours, something like that, and that is top class broadcasting. I think it probably edits down to a nice half-hour or 1 hour show.
I'd like to just skip through on these and watch the actual DVR parts, you know, the VTX transmissions. There's a lot of talking heads and a lot of people looking at stuff with screwdrivers in the pits and things. And a lot of, those wide angle shots where you're like, there's something moving on screen, hunt the pixel. But it'd be nice to just get the actual pilot's views and just watch that as kind of a canned version.
Yes, and they did come available on the last day. On the last day, there was a Twitch stream put up, and you could actually watch the pilot views. But up until that point, I think that's something that they can probably take away from the event, pulling everything together like that. I don't know how many rehearsals they did beforehand. I mean, we've all run events, and we know how difficult it is to rehearse things, especially because you haven't got a full crew there. But I think it would have been good, as you say, if there'd been more pilot eyeline.
But you can imagine that you've got this broadcaster there who's used to covering sports events at that stadium, and you've got someone there who knows how to run an HD0 event unit, and then you've got to somehow join the two together and have the video receiver in the right place to get a decent signal all the way around, but also pass it through into the video mixing system. There's a challenge there that maybe the two sides thought was a lot simpler than it actually turned out to be.
And you've got to get the commercial side of that right as well. I'll say no more.
Oh, yeah. But I enjoyed watching it. It was good fun. I mean, talking about the colors as well. So it's got the 6 colors because it's having the colors match the frequency that they're on for that race, and you're having to switch between frequencies a lot for each race. I couldn't work out when the frequencies were being switched. I mean, that's a challenge in sort of normal event world.
Well, we'd normally use Lifetime, wouldn't we, really, to do all of that for us, and it would tell us when it was going to be switched. The colors always went with one particular channel, and we were sent, because we had quite a bit of time in between races sometimes. The colors were checked and the frequencies were checked when they were collecting the quads from the round before. So what didn't happen was maybe there was 1 or 2 occasions across each day or something like that where people were on the wrong channel, but you couldn't really. It was a bit of a fail-safe, really, because if you had the right lights on, you were probably on the right channel. If 2 of you were the same color, probably not good. But there were people there checking it the whole time. And of course, we're not dealing with newbies here, are we? We're dealing with probably, and the worst case, top 5 in each country. There were a few wild cards as well, but it was generally the top 5 in each country.
So I'm thinking back. So what it would be the recovering of a quad from like inside some plywood or on top of a ledge or something, and the new quads will be setting up, selecting their frequencies, and as the live stream, we were watching an interview with a racer from the last round. The broadcaster who was doing the interviews, she was very good.
She was amazing,
at pulling out, quite a bit like blood from a stone sometimes. A good couple of minutes of interview across languages, it was very impressive.
Well, the only person that got interviewed from the British team because he won his round was Owen. And I don't know. I mean, my main recollection of going to Korea was seeing Owen smiling the whole time. I don't think he stopped smiling for 7 days, which was how long it was between leaving and arriving back at Heathrow.
It's a lot of travelling as well, right? How many time zones did you have to cross for that?
All of them, I think. It was an 8-hour time difference, and it was a 23-hour journey to get back from Seoul. But the day before, we'd also done 3 taxi rides and a 4-hour train journey. So yeah, it was fairly. I don't know. I mean, it was all just so exciting. It didn't really feel tiring. We just all felt so happy to be there and whatever. I mean, I did feel like Michael Palin at one point when we were on this. We went to the train station to catch the express train, and she said, "No, there aren't any seats." Okay, can we stand? No, you can't get on the train. Okay, we've got a flight leaving in 24 hours. Well, you could catch a slow train and change here, and so we did that, and it was pretty much. We were sitting on the floor for 3 hours, but it was just fascinating. And the Korean culture is so different to ours, and the language is so different to ours. It was really difficult to make ourselves understood, for them to make their point over to us. There were several taxi drivers that didn't hang around long enough for us to explain where we were going. But then we found Google Translate, and everything was right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this was mainly your responsibility for the team is getting the team there to the race and back again, right?
Yeah, and then and while we were there, because with an FAI event, there's only a certain number of people that can approach the judges and the officials, and it's only the team manager. So if you have one of these badges, say in team manager, and I'm going to keep that. I'm going to put that on my wall. It's only the ones with the team manager badges that were allowed to go up to the officials and say, "Oh, I don't think that was right." I mean, you can't just have any pilot going along and saying, "No, you shouldn't be taking that lap into account," and whatever. And at the end of every race, there was someone behind your seat. I don't know if you saw it.
With the cardboard boxes.
With the cardboard boxes, otherwise known as a missed marketing opportunity. and they were watching, and they were very good on this because they could actually watch the whole event. And I feel sorry for some of them, because if you were spotting for Min Chan, I mean, I don't know how you actually see whether he's gone through a gate or done half the track or something like that. And so sometimes they actually watched it at half speed afterwards with a jog wheel, so they could make sure all the obstacles were gone through. And then that would be agreed with the pilot. Obviously, if they agreed that it was 3 laps, it was quite easy. But if you'd missed a gate or something like that, they would show that to you, and then they would write you down for 2 laps rather than 3, for example. And then either the team manager or the pilot signed off on that, and that went straight into the official results. That part of it was really good, actually, well organised.
Well, I think we have a famous name in British FPV racing to thank for that, right? I mean, Eric, I saw milling around that sort of area. Eric Liku, who ran Rotor Racing for basically the first sort of organised racing events in the UK.
Yeah, that's right. And we went to some of those events in the early years, didn't we?
Absolutely.
When we were kind of, I don't know, competitive. Eric was there. Of course, Eric couldn't be our judge on any occasion. Eric had to stand aside. All national teams had to be judged by someone from a different nationality.
Makes sense.
There was about 8 judges there, and they rotated around. What they might be on the start line, they might be checking channels, they might be registering pilots, etc., or some kind of interface here and there. Yeah, it was a class act.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the other side of this then, for anyone who doesn't know, and I haven't really quite understood it, how does the team selection work nowadays? How did we end up with Joshy and Owen all sort of representing the UK at the international event?
Yeah, it's all written down. It wasn't just me deciding that these people should come along. It was decided probably a couple of years ago now, or maybe it was tweaked a little bit at the last AGM. But we changed our season to run from July to July. And at the end of July, it was the top 3 that were in a BDR8 rankings. So that's the top 3 of the people that would qualify for our championships. But of course, at the time, we had to choose who was going to Korea. We hadn't had our championship, so we couldn't take that into account. And so it was the top 3 pilots. If one of those was a junior, then it was just the top 3, and that's where we were. And then we other teams, though, they had a bigger group that went out there, and I think that's something that we must work on for next year. We must have a female representative in our team next year.
Absolutely.
Do you participate in other racing leagues as well? Is it just the FAI series, or do you go broader and do other championships as well?
There is a European Championship. I don't think that anyone in the UK has been to that for a few years. I'm not sure who that's officiated by. Do you know, Andy?
I can't say off the top of our heads. No.
What about the well-known ones like MultiGP and others?
That's a commercial organisation. It's mostly run by the US. Well, I think it is run from the US. It isn't something that's really taken off big time over here yet. I think we're going to see a little bit of movement from our. I mean, the format we were racing with the FAI event isn't actually that common in America because they mostly run MultiGP, so they had to put a team together based on.
How do the tracks and the format differ between the two then?
The track is set by the local association. The track isn't necessarily set by the FAI for the FAI events. For MultiGP, which you might have to help me with because I've not looked into it that much, there are a set of series tracks. A set of tracks which are set out, which are set up all over the world, and they're quite carefully
provide measurements.
So
Yeah. So every local chapter is essentially racing the same track for their qualifier round.
That's right. I'm not sure how they actually check that's entirely correct, but they do that as well. There were a couple of other things that were going on there as well as the FAI events. There was drone football.
Yes, I saw some of that on the stream. That looks.
We spoke to them a while ago.
We did. Well, we spoke to the US US drone soccer people. Yes, but there was.
Tell me about it, because I never got the chance to watch it. I was just so busy for 7 days. I didn't see any of it.
It's not the easiest sport to track. There's 2 teams, and they fly these quads in plastic mesh shrouds, basically. And they're all spec'd, so they're a specific size category with specific power-traded motor setup. And they've got a bunch of LEDs so they can tell whose team is who. And they're flying line of sight. And it's kind of like a Hogwarts-style like little puck they have to knock around through the air into a hoop goal, I believe.
So I think, from my understanding, so there's like and the number on each team. One or two of them is like a goalkeeper, and the rest of them are like trying to fly through the hoop on the other side of the cage.
No, they're trying to knock something through the hoop, aren't they?
I thought they were trying to just fly through the hoop.
No, I think there's a ball, a kind of dumb, unpiloted thing that they have to knock around. I thought.
Well, we'll have to look. We'll have to look into this. But I'm fairly certain they're all flown. I think. But we'll.
Let's move on to avoid any more controversy. And the other thing that was going on there was some esports. So there were some simulators as well. It's difficult though if you've got pilots that are taking part in the FAI event and on the esports and on the football, because they might actually be called to be in all three places at the same time. So there had to be a bit of flexibility within the schedule to allow that to happen.
Yeah, it looked like the football was dominated by South Korea and Germany. I didn't, from what I saw of the stream, I didn't see any other teams getting involved. So, I think that's fairly early days for them still.
To be honest, if I'd known it was line of sight, I might have gone and given it a crack as well. there were other things around there as well. There was a line of sight obstacle course with like one of these old drones, and I will say that I beat the rest of the team hands down in that, because they could only fly line of sight with the tail facing at them. You know, they're not proper pilots, are they?
And this is where we see the BMFA logo sort of reappear on his shoulder there.
I checked the drone soccer. I believe they are, like Frank said, all piloted. Maybe I was just looking at someone who wasn't being particularly animated before.
But, yeah, it's a wonderful experience. The job of a team manager comes up for renewal every year, so I'm in place pending someone else taking it over, or myself being re-elected or reselected, shall I say. And I really want to do it again because it was a fantastic experience. I'm not sure we'll be going out to the Far East again, but if we are, yeah, I'm in. And if we're going somewhere closer like Italy, yeah, I'm in. But it's an experience. It's a great time, but I wouldn't really call it a holiday. It wasn't really very restful. No, I mean,
constantly on the go.
Yeah, all the time, and finding out. And I don't think Korea is quite a dry country, but we certainly didn't find any pubs anyway. It was great to meet all the other teams. I think something that I don't know. You mentioned it there, Stephen, that the cameras went into the pits and showed some of the footage from there. I didn't see any of that, and certainly they weren't in our pits. And I think that's a real shame, because they could have cut to some of that between some of the races, and I think that would have been quite interesting.
Instead of just pilots looking nervous, pilots doing something.
And exactly
a bit interesting and more technical. Yeah.
In front of a cardboard box that hasn't got advertising on.
Yes.
Yeah. And the occasional sign appearing behind a tree for some reason that I could never quite understand. But...
Yeah, I do think the camera crew got bored, didn't they? Really, they were basically showing video of their own truck and somebody saying, "I am a tree" next to it, etc.
So I noticed Min Chang Kim won, which seems to be his permanent place. He lives there on the podium. What was it like, kind of racing up against him? Was he obviously just in a league of his own, because he looks like a machine when you see the footage?
Yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener actually, because we were going there thinking that we'd have not a chance of winning it, but certainly be up at the top level, being pretty competitive. But they did seem to take a step up from where we were. But this is a good thing, and this is a point from which we can learn, and a point which we can move forward from. For us, because the track was so big, it meant that most pilots were flying a quad that was quite outside of their normal comfort zone. The track was so long that everybody had special batteries made up, so everyone was flying 1850s, etc.
1856s on a 5-inch.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had quite different characteristics. It was a very fast flowing track. I mean, there were thoughts before we went away that maybe we should be going there with 6-inch, etc., because that was still within the rules, so we could have something that was more efficient. So I think for next time, and what did happen was the track came out on it wasn't Velocidrone, it's another simulation software, which again we hadn't really used, so we weren't really familiar with that as well. Hey,
Is that the one? Sorry, I just decided to unminimize it. So it looks like there is a lot of space there. This is a huge, very, very wide track. I'm taking that's all the elements of the track that we're looking there.
It is, although that's not actually the track.
Oh,
Now,
so that's just a fancy little graphic set up for the ceremony.
No, it is the track as was set up for the ceremony. And the reason it is that shape is so that when you look down from above, which I'm not sure anyone actually did, it looks like a quad. Yeah. So it was quite confusing when we were doing, when the guys were doing the warm up, because they were saying we've been practicing on the sim, but it's not the same track. It's a different layout where we go these split S's and switchback gates, etc. And they said, yes, well, if we put the lights out to do the actual track, which we're racing tomorrow, by the way, so don't worry about it, then it doesn't look like a quad when you view it from 500 feet. So practice was a little bit odd in the terms that we weren't really flying that.
Yeah, this looks like a really large space for, modern quad racing is typically pretty technical small tracks, whereas this just looks like wide open the whole way.
GB quad racing, the quad racing we do over here is generally on much smaller tracks. I think this track was about twice the length of our championship track this year. So it's quite a different thing. It's like, without wishing to say we are F1, it's like an F1 car going to an IndyCar circuit. Right? It's all much bigger. It's all quite different. It looks the same, but it's not. Say again?
Fall asleep halfway round.
Yes. But they really ripped. And what was really good and worked really well for the telly was you can see it down there, bottom right-hand side, where you've got those two lines and the orange and red square. That was basically off the start line, and he shot down there, went up a ramp at the end, and then came back through the red one and came back down. And I saw they had a speed camera on that. And I saw 195 kph on that. I never saw it go over 200, but they were doing 195 kilometers per hour down there.
With a gigantic battery, which most people would never consider flying.
Yeah, that's right. And
it sounds weird to think about 18650s being used because you don't associate.
No, he said 1850 mAh.
Like 1850. I thought you said 18650.
Yeah.
No,
so
sorry.
Huge 6S batteries then. And how long was it? Was it lapped, or in terms of number of laps, or was it timed? And
it was 3 laps. I don't even know what the maximum time you had to do it was because no one took that long. It was what was it now? It was about 20-second laps, 22-second laps, something like that. And I think our guys were up at 27-second laps. So it was all over in just over a minute, even though it was a massive track. And those batteries were toasty at the end of that.
Nice and warm, a little bit swollen.
Yeah, a little bit puffed. And but I don't know. We've got to think really. If we want to go and take part in these events, then this must, in some ways, maybe become something we do a bit more. I mean, it's a question we've got to put to the membership really about where we want to go with our hobby, with our discipline.
Is it how is the BDRA running in relation to the BMFA? Because I believe the BMFA sponsored a lot of this, paid for a lot of money to get everyone out there. How is it all running between the two at the moment?
There's a relationship between the BDRA and the BMFA. We are separately administered. They do provide us with some facilities. For example, they host a website and provide the emails, etc. And we're a specialist body for them. That brings about some obligations for us in terms of the way we run things. But strangely, and I didn't realize this, but one of the obligations was that we don't actually have to be BMFA members to take part in a BDRA event, which I thought that would have been compulsory, but it's certainly not. And they provided us with a lot of support. They provided us with the majority of our funding, I think about a third of our funding. And then we had some money from a few sponsors and a GoFundMe page as well, and that paid for our trip over there. Still had to be topped up a bit by those going, but it got us most of the way there. This year, we're hoping that we're going to get on the sponsorship train, sponsorship bandwagon earlier, so that we can fulfill that gap and then give our pilots what we now know would have been better for them and enable them to be better prepared and maybe do better. Because we came 9th out of 28 teams.
Okay.
And it would be great to do better than that. I mean, not all pilots had their best weekend. And if we could just get everybody up to that level, we would have done fantastically well. I mean, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough when it starts going wrong on day one and you're fixing, and the whole 3 days you've got a soldering iron in your hand.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's my entire experience of racing. So
this might be why we're not there, though, other than in a managerial capacity. There.
Well, because you don't have a 12 quads, so you can just pick up another one and carry on.
3 was the limit, and they were all marked in when we got there, and you had to use a quad that was marked to take part in the event. 3 was the maximum. I mean, it was a bit Trigger's broom, to be honest. And they didn't mark lots of pieces of the quad, so you could have swapped it over, but nobody did that. I mean, realistically, everyone's got their favourite quad, and then another one, and then another one. And by the time you're getting to the 4th and 5th, unless you really are just having them built for you in a factory, they're not going to be your favourites anymore. So I don't know about you guys, but if one of my quads is broken, I want to fix that really over a weekend. I probably should just bin it and start with another one, but and I think that's not running LEDs and not knowing how LEDs would work, and the fact you can get shorts and fires with LEDs, etc., which happened. It was a learning experience.
I think it's a pretty good result, though. I mean, going over in a completely different sort of track, maybe not with the right gear for it, and having just to adapt, getting 9th out of 28 is pretty good. It's if you could be prepared for that and have the right practice in the right quads, I think that would be interesting. But do you think wherever it is next year, the sort of the format of the sort of the big flowy track will be the same, or is that going to depend on the country and the sort of particular place putting it on?
They have been big flowy tracks in previous years, so I think it might be reasonable to assume that it would be.
More big flowy.
But whether they will be or not, if it's in Italy, I don't know. We will find out. I think it's 6 weeks before they publish the track. Just to go back to our rankings, actually, we were there amongst about 130 competitors, something like that. And overall, we secured 30th place for Owen. 20th place for Owen, 32nd for Joshi, and 56th for Saul. And also, Joshi did 15th out of a very competitive junior field as well. So we did well. My personal aim was top 10, but I didn't tell anyone till afterwards. But I don't know if it counts.
So what's the plan for the next one then? I guess because there's going to be the selection through the same process through British qualifying events. So that's the thing to look out for if anyone wants to race competitively. Is the qualifying events, the QEs?
Yeah.
To get the points. Is it still the qualifying points?
I don't think you were at the AGM this year, Andrew. No. I don't think any of you guys were actually, but there were thoughts expressed about, because we are in an area now where we're having fewer pilots compete in events. And you must remember when we used to go to Western Park, if you hadn't signed up by 30 seconds past 8, you were not getting in. Yeah. There were times when the website crashed because so many people wanted to sign up at the same time. They said it was PayPal crash, but I don't think even PayPal is going to be overloaded by 70 people, etc. And I remember they had to increase the field from 60 to 72. because so many people had signed up so quickly, and it was impossible to see what order they went through in, that it was extended. So we need to get back to that. And at the AGM this year, there were several people talking about changing things around, and we've got a new committee now, and we're looking to make it more. We want to get back to maybe not if I don't get in the first minute, I don't get in, but it would be nice to fully sell out events for certain. And so the whole BQE format is going to be discussed over the months of November and December. Okay. And then I know that there are events scheduled for very early in the new year. And again, we'll run through to the end of July. The team will be selected at the end of July. And I think that the World Championships will be around about October again, something like that. It's actually really difficult, and I didn't really appreciate it from the outside, to get all of these dates to come together. We're talking about planning events a year away, and you think, well, God, it's a year away. You can sort that out. But no, it's a complicated puzzle to put together.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people with a lot of
especially
schedules.
With people who are, not doing this professionally and have to work around real life jobs.
Yeah, I am really lucky that I don't have a full-time job anymore. And I think I would have really, really struggled to fulfill the role as team GBR manager if I was working full-time as well, especially in the job that I had, because it was pretty full on.
So sponsorship needs to go further than free props.
Well, I'm not suggesting it should be a paid position, Stephen, but you never know. No, I had a great time, but it wasn't a holiday, as I say.
Yeah. But if you get reselected for next year, how do you think what would you do differently to prepare the pilots?
To prepare the pilots, I think that we should remember that we are a team. We have to. I mean, it must be like golfers going off on the Ryder Cup. I mean, for the whole year, they're competing against each other, and then they all play for the same team or for two teams in the Ryder Cup. And I think we need to make that happen earlier, so that all the guys or girls and whatever are all trying to do the same thing that's best for the team, because it is, in a way, a team competition. I think the importance of the simulator is going to matter, and I just wonder if you asked the question, Wayne, about do I think it's going to be a big track again? I mean, if we make all our tracks big this year and then they put a small track on, if we go to Italy or wherever else it is, then we're not going to have got that right.
You could have variety though, just keep surprising people.
Yeah.
I guess the struggle there is having the space to safely have a big, fast track. I mean, usually, the track designs are quite heavily targeted towards lots of chicanes to slow people down, so that it's safe to do it.
Only the very best pilots are sitting at 100% throttle.
Yeah,
but if you're sitting with an 1800 Mars 6S on your quad and 2100 kV motors, and you're just holding the throttle wide open, and something goes wrong, that thing's off like a cannonball. You're not seeing that again. You're gonna have to go walk to the next field over.
Yeah, and there was a bit of that as well. They were very good on safety. Everything was cordoned off, but there were a few quads that clipped gates flat out, and they just went. They went a long way, but into a safe zone where it wasn't a problem.
As you're legally mandated to say.
I wasn't running the event. And there were some, especially in the practice, I was quite, oh dear, where's the first aid box? Because it felt like some people were going to be nipping their fingers, because on the last day, there was a higher level of scrutineering, and they decided that you couldn't actually go and recover your own quad. So the quad were recovered by local helpers and whatever, and they weren't flyers. And what's more, they weren't actually allowed to unplug the quad, because
what?
Yeah, they had to bring it back. And so on the last day, they decided that the protocol was that you turned your transmitter off so that the quad went into failsafe and it could not arm when some civilian helper was going and getting it and bringing it back. And the reason they decided to turn the quad off was because when one of the guys was doing one of the excellent TV reviews, someone took the transmitter off him, flicked the switch, and accidentally armed it. No injuries occurred from this, but that's what actually happened. So on the last day, it was turn your transmitter off, they bring it over. And also some nationalities were complaining about people that didn't really know what they were doing, pulling the plugs out because they'd just be pulling on the end of the XT60 rather than be pulling a pair of wires. And so it was starting to come off the board, etc. So I don't know, maybe that's something that needs to be a bit better next time. The concern was that if the pilot or a helper went and recovered a quad, that they could meddle with it in such a way that it would then pass scrutineering. But no one failed scrutineering in the end. Sometimes the threat of actually having a speed camera negates the speeding, doesn't it, really? And I think that was the case here. You will be scrutineered, okay.
What about speed soldering practice as well to get those quads up and running if you're only allowed 3? Do you need to get people used to soldering, get things up and running in 5, maybe 3 minutes, instead of having a whole weekend to tinker and make a cup of tea and think about it?
Oh, you've not been to many race events, have you?
Plenty of sitting around. No hurry then, no hurry.
No, there's rush the whole time, isn't it, really? And even Sol, who had the most terrible of luck, really. I mean, his practice session, the extended practice session on the first day, he must have really rued that because he damaged a lot of gear in that, and that's what he spent all of his time recovering from. And I've got pictures of us all sitting there at 10 o'clock at night back in the hotel soldering to get his bits and pieces back into place, and you know, we're still sorting it out in breakfast as well. And if I got the angle right, I probably would have seen the hotel owner in the background looking very unhappy that we were soldering on.
Why are you soldering on the breakfast table?
Yeah.
These little puffs of smoke coming from his very nice table. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just a fabulous experience. I was very, very lucky to go, and I really want to do it again. And I really want
good luck
to this time
next year for whoever ends up taking the baton, whether it's you or someone else. But you know, it's great to see that Team GBR is out there doing stuff.
Yeah.
It was very nice to see, you know, the UK having a team out at the international event. It was a relief. It feels like there's been too many events that we haven't made it to.
Yes, there's been. Well, yeah, we haven't made it to them, have we? We've gone to other events, such as the one that was out in I can't remember. It was out in the Middle East somewhere, wasn't it? Where was that? Where Luke Bannister went and won $250,000 or something like that. But that wasn't actually.
Dubai, that one, wasn't it?
That was Dubai, that's right. But that wasn't actually an FAI event, as I understand it.
And that was as X-Blades, right? Rather than the UK team, I think.
I don't know that part of the history that well.
It's that this is a while ago now, isn't it?
Yeah, X-Blades was the team that won because I think they said they'd split the money between like the 60 odd people that were in the team. Which is, I don't think Luke got quite as much as he would have liked from that point of view.
It was nice to go there, and as I say, and I've got the flag over there in the background, and we walked around the stadium with that, and that's my flag. I'm going to remember that and my badge. It's lucky me.
Nice memory.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the achievement scheme? Which just in case someone actually.
So you were saying I was among the rarefied few that did this voluntarily without coercion as a group, and I'd like to report it's a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It was quite relaxing, quite fun. I'd like to encourage other people to do it, just as a. Maybe you don't intend to do a lot of racing. It's an FPV qualification. I'm not a massive racer myself, but I think it's a great way of going above the bare minimum and showing that, you know, as a community, we're good at what we do, and we're not just a bunch of oiks with quads.
That's right, because the BMFA developed all their achievement schemes really to help everybody better themselves. There's no requirement to pass these achievement schemes. Clubs might actually have a requirement for you to be an A or a B test certificate holder if you're flying fixed wing or heli, etc. But there's no requirement at the moment for quad pilots, because there wasn't really that many qualifications, to be honest, for them to actually pass these tests. And the test itself, you did very well. It was. I was quite nervous.
Well, everything was still attached at the end, which is good.
Well, I don't think you even had a retest, did you? Because you're allowed 2 goes at the test on the day. You did your practice, which was pretty good, and I was sorry that I made that a practice, because you would have passed, especially if you did badly on the next 2, because then your practice would have been a pass and your 2 real attempts wouldn't have been. But yeah, I mean, it's all about safety. It's all about not injuring yourself, not injuring others, not injuring the public, and being responsible, really. And I think that's something that the BMFA really strive for.
Yeah, because they're always very keen to say that, like, the achievement scheme is there, like, purely for your own benefit. If an event decides they want you to have a B cert to fly there, or if a club wants you to have an A cert to fly there, that's up to them. But that's not the BMFA saying that's what you need. Like, that's not a stipulation. But I can tell you, as an event organizer, it makes your life a lot easier if you don't need to find a personal reference for someone. They can just show you the B cert, and you're like, yeah, all right, crack on. Now, that's really why the certs get required, is because it makes a life a lot easier for someone who's organizing something. If you're running a club and someone just comes up to you and says, look, I've got my A cert, then you're probably fine to just crack on and have a fly. And you're not going to jeopardize our club. That's why I thought
this was a good idea. I think we had Chris on a while ago, Chris Bradbury, talking about schemes in general. And this caught my attention because, you know, I do technically own some RC aircraft with wings, and I have in the past destroyed several RC aircraft with wings. Probably had them in the air for a total of less than 30 seconds. So I mainly fly quads. And this was a qualification that targeted flying multi-rotors, and it targeted multi-rotors from an FPV perspective instead of a line of sight perspective, which is important because a lot of the use of multi-rotors, people jump to assume it's going to be a DJI camera platform. It's going to be flown line of sight by someone who is being guided through this by a smartphone app and doesn't know what they're doing. And this kind of stigma attaches itself to a lot of multi-rotor users. And I thought the fact that a certification that targets multi-rotors with FPV along a racing course where there's an element of skill, there's obstacles to get round, there's smoothly joining maneuvers together. It's a good thing to show that I can do as a pilot, to kind of just show all the heli pilots and wing pilots who are probably justifiably suspicious of multi-rotor pilots that, yes, you know, we can fly, we can go through this accreditation scheme the same way as they would and perform maneuvers and avoid obstacles and so on and so forth. And I think it's very important that as multi-rotor pilots or FPV pilots, we have something like this to shed this stigma of being reckless and, you know, just using smartphone apps and not really having full control of our vehicles. It's important, and I think it's good for the community as a whole. So that's my angle on it.
Yeah, I agree with you, because there's a lot of younger people that come into the quad racing and flying multicopters, etc. And there's not a lot of young people that go into the older disciplines of wings and helis, etc. But also, as we know, there's also crossover, as you've described there, where someone might start young with quads, etc. And then as they get a bit older, maybe they'll do helis and maybe they'll do wings, fixed wing, etc. scale. So it's a good thing for all of us to have more people within the community, because I can go across all of them, and I'm sure lots of other people will as well. And there aren't enough young people in this hobby.
Sorry. Yeah, it just puts multi-rotors on the same footing as the wings and the helis, which I think is really positive.
So do you fancy a question or two from your test, Stephen? Do you think you can still remember the answer?
Yeah, fire away. See if I can.
You can Google really quickly.
I should say to the audience, I do not have any reference information here, and I've just had a nice IPA here, so.
Okay then. So, what's the maximum height that you can fly at without authorization of a quad? This would be
400 feet, 100 meters.
Yes, that's I think it's 118 meters actually.
Okay.
400 feet. Yes, that's a pass. And Frank, I think you should have a question as well.
Yeah, go for it.
Because you've only had one beer, as far as I can tell, and you're not even showing us what the label on that is. Very, very, very good of you. Wayne, you're getting a little bit nervous there. I think you know what's coming next.
I am. I could have got the first question brilliantly as well. So I'm running out of ones I know.
I think you're allowed to fly higher if you're not a multi-rotor, which always irked me as well.
So when can you fly without a dedicated spotter? And what would your limitations be?
It's
there's a special word for it, Frank.
It's basically at a race, but it's a sterile environment.
Yeah,
that's right. And can you remember how high you can go in that environment?
Yeah, isn't it like 30 feet or something?
Yeah, it's quite a bit higher. I think it's 30 meters, maybe 50 meters.
I think it's 50 meters.
Yeah, I think it's 30 meters. And I mean that was good that we got that dispensation, because otherwise you need a lot of spotters. When we were out in Korea, spotters were line of sight. Spotters weren't allowed to take part by the goggles. And actually, the other thing I should mention is everybody that went there was given a booklet on how you fly drones in Korea, and that was obviously part of the procedure, really, and part of the tick box exercise. So, Curry Kitten.
Frank got a hard one. Stephen got an easy one. So it's time for an easy one.
If you were wanting to fly in a flight restriction zone of a protected aerodrome, who would you have to get permission from?
I think I have to get permission from the tower at the aerodrome.
Yeah, it wasn't that hard, was it? Air traffic control or the owners of the protected aerodrome. I've got another 20 here, but I think we've probably reached our time.
Yeah, we have. But I just see in the chat, there's quite a lot of discussion about how the achievement scheme, the FPV cert, relates to the line of sight cert. So Harry Haggis is up in Scotland, so he's dealing with the Scottish.
Hello, Callum.
I can't remember what the AA stands for, but the Scottish equivalent of the BMFA, I guess. Or it's like a special interest group within the BMFA. I can't remember how they relate to each other. Either way, so apparently they've got a scheme, but it doesn't include multi-rotors. They've suggested the BMFA line of sight multi-rotor test. Caroline Tyler is saying that the multi-rotor FPV is only an extension of the line of sight multi-rotor ACERT, but I don't think that's quite right.
That is correct. That is correct. The multi-rotor FPV is an extension to the ACERT, and you have to do the multi-rotor ACERT first. But this is a separate qualification altogether. It's to do with racing quads.
Exactly. So what did Stephen do? I'm confused.
I did the racing one.
You did the racing one.
So I can't fly a line of sight to save my ass. Come on now.
Well, that's what I mean. Right? So there's the racing cert.
Yeah.
And there's the multi-rotor ACERT, that's the line of sight, and there's the FPV extension to that line of sight one.
Yeah.
There's the FPV extension to the multi-rotor A and B.
which I do think is a little bit backwards. Like, there's a lot of people who can fly FPV. That's why I was doing this, because I thought it was important to underscore that FPV is kind of the starting path for a lot of people.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that if their goggles fail, they're absolutely done for.
Like, I'd have thought the line of sight multi-rotor should be an extension to the FPV multi-rotor, really.
Well, we can put it forward, can't we? Maybe get
you could do one either and then the other.
What I tend to think is, if you have a specific FPV cert, then part of that as your safety thing should be your goggles are out, now line your craft line of sight to prove you can do that, because I think that's
if you can flick it into angle mode, sure.
Yeah, that's an important skill. Everybody should know how to recover a drone if they lose certain vision aspects of it. But I don't think many of us would be able to fly figure eights that well. Mostly because we fly too fast and too low, and it's just there's the recipe for disaster there when you're like, oh, I'm in acro mode trying to do this line of sight now. Oh, I'm tumbling over the ground.
Oh, what are my rates? Oh, they're 1,300 degrees per second. Not great for line of sight.
But regardless, Stephen didn't have to do any line of sight and has a piece of paper that says A on it.
Piece of paper,
so,
exactly. So I've gone the logical step that a lot of people, listening and watching to this will have done, which is just to put the goggles on and start flying, and after doing the simulator and bounce off things a bit, and off we go. And I did do a little bit of line of sight. I lied a bit. I started with one of those little hub stand things, but it's not something that I do more than once a year these days. So FPV is what I wanted to look at.
Well, if Curry Kitten gets his way, you'll have to do a bit more of it, won't you? Just in case you have an unfortunate moment. Maybe it should be that your spotter should be able to fly line of sight, and you just hand the transmitter over.
Yeah.
Did we get rid of that thing about the spotter has to be able to take over your flight, and because you need to be a super technical spotter then?
Apply smelling salts, slap you on the back.
No, the spotter's role is purely about safety. It's purely about making sure you don't endanger someone else, and if you're running into trouble, to tell you to dump it, basically.
If I'm not much mistaken, the ANO, the actual proper law bit, the spotter is only there to make sure that you don't cause an issue for other aircraft, right? Like, that's what they're doing, is they're meant to be looking out to make sure that they're in manned aircraft
and hazards on the ground. Like,
is it hazards on the ground as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. The spotter should alert you if an unexpected person walks into the flying area, for example. That's something the spotter
absolutely
should be
very helpful to have a spotter there. That's what we're doing all the time.
That's in the BMFI guide. That's in the BMFA guidelines for this.
I can imagine it's in the ANO though.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm sure it's part of the guidelines because it's a sensible thing. Like, if you're there, you've got a pair of eyes, having someone be able to tell you someone's about to come onto the field, there's a cyclist about to go past, there's a dog on the loose, all of that is helpful information. Being able to have someone there to, someone's like walking up quite angrily behind you and is about to clock you one, and maybe is there to intercept and talk, diffuse the situation while you land. Like, that's all helpful to have a spotter.
But those are non-flight related issues, I suppose, really, aren't they?
But I think the sort of the ANO, the pure legal side of it is that they're there for keeping separation from manned aircraft. But we've definitely gone over the hour.
On to the minutiae now. What's in which thing? We don't want to fly into anyone. We don't want to hurt
with
anyone.
Frank. In a coming week, we will do Minutia with Frank. A dedicated hour of the footnotes to the footnotes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do a lot more reading because I have not been keeping up with it all. It's all changed in the past few years, and don't listen to me.
Well, Frank loves reading lengthy PDFs. So
the problem is I don't have a nice long commute on a train anymore. When I had a nice long commute on the train, I didn't mind reading all every single document from beginning to end. But I drive now, and it's harder to read documents from beginning to end on my commute now.
That's probably
remind me what's commuting again.
Oh, go away!
You leave your house to work. You leave your house.
I know.
I mean, like you did, Stephen. If anyone wants to contact me or contact the other people on the BDRA, if people are situated further away from the southeast, I'm very happy to do further tests. Just drop us a line. secretariat@bdra.uk. I'm sure it'll appear somewhere in the notes, and if that can be put out there and people want to do it, we can do it in various places around the country, and be more than delighted to get more people like you, Stephen, qualified.
Secretary@bdra.co.uk?
No, just bdra.uk.
bdra.uk. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. You have been listening to Let's Drone Out, and this week we have had Curry.
Goodbye.
We've had Stephen.
Thanks. Good night.
We have had David.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on. I've been Frank / Andrew. Thank you very much for listening. See you next week. Who have we got on next week? I can't remember.
We are talking to a unit, I believe, next week, who's going to be telling us about various updates with AM32 and Betaflight and how to contribute to some of these projects.
Ooh, there we go. That's what to look forward to next week. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.